night. A beautiful breeze past, they feeling nice. I drink and walk out with some ice. I like a big head and now I'm in the sky. This party here got plenty vibes. The people dance whole time, no social vibes. Money tight, but I have my life. And I have good friends, so I go have a time. All I hear is March calling, the road calling, the friend them calling, the bank account crying. I answer the phone, I answer the phone, I answer the phone, I answer the. All I hear is March calling, the rum calling, the girlfriend asks me to stay on darling. But I answer the phone, I answer the phone, I answer the phone, I answer the phone. All I hear is March.
WEFM, the new fresh sound.
WhatsApp us or call us at 457-9997. Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
Everybody, let's do this. All right. We are back with you for another segment of our Activated Mornings program here on WEFM. In studio, it's Dianna, Cain, and myself, Roleza, Samuel. And of course, today being Monday morning, we are joined by the lovely Dr. The Honorable Dr. General Thompson.
It isn't so much the honorable.
I know. I just messed it around.
No, when you say the lovely.
Oh, you prefer that?
No. It's not that. I was shocked that you said lovely.
Yeah.
Dianna, well, did that surprise you too?
Doc, me and you might do a little spying, but we cool.
No. You and I don't spy. Not at all. You know, but just morning to say, Gerald Thompson is lovely. I tell you, you've warmed my heart.
It's always the little things, Doc. It's always the little things.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine. Big weekend. Oh boy.
You was outside?
I was outside. Was I outside?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Was I outside?
Okay. It's a statement. Sorry, not a question. All right.
Tell me something. I was outside. I was outside. Lots, I didn't go to escape, but I passed that massive. I want to talk a little about that later, and there was a wedding out at the Mangrove and so forth, with some fireworks, small amount, and then, the semifinals and so forth. I enjoyed that. Well, that's all I'll talk about later, my segment. Come back at
8:45.
8:45. Yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about those things. So I had some fun meeting up some old folks, meeting up some. But it's to contrast this, not only with the past, but with the present, in terms of the two directions, Carnival is taken for the young and for the more mature, and I want to look at that.
Okay. All right. Doc more outside than do two of us, Dianna. You were walking, I was walking, and Doc properly outside enjoying himself, right? But I think that's how it's, like somebody was telling me yesterday, walk when you're young, right? So I suppose when you get to Doc's age, you'd be able to just be fully outside enjoying things.
Talking about?
No, a friend.
Let me tell you something.
No,
I used to be a member of Arnesville Cultural and Sports Club. We won Section of the Year twice. I used to play Juve, When I came back to St. Vincent, so forth, one time I was going to play King of the Band, and all those sort of things. Don't tell me youth and all that. Let me tell you something.
You enjoyed your youth as well.
I had my youth. I had my youth, and I still hold on to a little bit of that youth. You know what I mean? That's still precious.
Listeners, let me tell y'all, Doc is actually coming here with a lot more energy than the two of us on a Monday morning. And I'm telling y'all, Doc came in here fiery this morning. I'm like, but it's good to see.
Why be? Of course, you gotta have energy. You need energy. If your energy level drops, go and see somebody like me. You understand? Check you out. You know what I mean? Find out why your energy level dropped. Don't take it for granted. We know why our
energy level has dropped down. Don't even start with that.
All right. But I was asking the same question.
All right. So we are going to quickly touch on a topic that, just kind of caught my attention on the weekend. This is in relation to a man who was lost in prison, quote unquote lost, lost in prison for the past 38 years. And the question is, who looks out for the mentally ill? All right, so this is in relation to Robert Charles, who has been institutionalized in one form or the other since 1982. All right, so Mr. Charles initially he was confined to the mental home in 1982. And then in 1987, having committed a murder there, he was sent to prison. All right. So he has been, all right, so I'm reading this from the Vincentian. It's also online. If you don't remember, the Vincentian is also online, but I read it from the actual newspaper. So just bear with me a second. So Charles, who was born in Trinidad but resided in Spring Village, had made an appearance before Justice Brian Cottle on February 14, 2023, having been found lost in the prison system after having already spent over 14 years behind bars, and he was still incarcerated without trial. So the important thing to note is that he has been incarcerated since 1987 without an actual trial. All right, Charles, who is now 60, has been a patient at the Mental Health Rehabilitation Center since 1982. And 87, he was charged with committing a murder while he was a patient at the institution. He was 23 years at the time. All right, so Mrs. Kibakis Batiste, yeah, I said that right, said that Charles had been found unfit to plead for the charge, and the court made an order on the 15th of October, 1987, for him to be kept at the mental institution until His Majesty's pleasure. All right. And since then, nothing has, in essence, been done about this situation. So one of the things that they're noting, or one of the things that Justice Carter said, when Charles's situation surfaced before Justice Brian Carter in February 2023, the judge admitted that this one fell through the cracks, adding that to have a prisoner sitting in prison for over 14 years without checks or reviews is a serious indictment on the system. The judge lamented, you cannot have somebody sitting there as in prison unless you have them reviewed. You have an obligation to check on them from time to time, and there are no checks made on the prisoner since 2008, which is an indictment on our part. All right. On the same page, Superintendent of Prisons, Dwayne Bailey, also spoke about the urgent need for mental health to be addressed here in SVG. All right. He says that the situation is extremely difficult to deal with. It's something that requires urgent attention and should be addressed nationally and from a prison standpoint. All right. Bailey has described the situation as sad, disturbing, and it is not right. So when I came across this, the first thing that crossed my mind was, who looks out for these individuals, right? And I also had to ask, wasn't there a family member who, over the passage of the years, who was there or who wasn't there to advocate for him on his behalf? Because 1987, so I'm just looking at the part of when he was actually charged with murder, that was 38 years ago. Since then, we have had changing of the hands in terms of superintendent of prisons. Was it a case where this situation was never brought up? Wasn't like the new persons informed? How is it possible that we can have somebody in prison? Yes, I know that he is mentally ill. Yes, he does have periods of being violent, but still, it says something to me that about our justice system, to know that somebody who is mentally ill has been in prison all of these years without an actual trial. And to bear in mind too that our life sentence is 25 years. He has done more than what our life sentence is termed. So what is going to happen in this situation? All right, let me play some music.
Let me come in here, No checks made on the prisoner since 2008. This is awful. This is really, really absolutely terrible, man. It really floored me. I want to tell you that I had wanted to become, at one point, I'm a psychiatrist. And in 1983, I did 1 year my first attempt at doing residency in the United States in psychiatry. I didn't continue because after that 1 year, I realized I did not want to be a psychiatrist anymore. And I switched to internal medicine. I don't want to get into the fine details, but I was inspired to go into psychiatry previously because in England, I had done almost 6 months in relation to as a medical student in the area of psychiatry. I remember spending a lot of time at Claybury Hospital. In those days, the thinking was to keep mental ill patients in an institution for a long time. And that thinking started to change in the late 80s, in the 90s, where possible, to have it community-based and involving what you just said, outpatient care, family members, and so. This morning I was trying to call down to Spring Village, and I wasn't sure if it was Spring Village on the windward side or on the leeward side. But since it's Charles, I figured it was, and I was trying to find out a little about it. I couldn't get the information, from the persons I'd called. But this is absolutely terrible that there's no follow-up. But let me go on to say that we have to dig a little deeper, because Kibakis Gill said, if he is a threat to the mental health staff, as she stated, who should be more qualified than anyone to deal with mentally ill people, how could he not be a threat to the prison staff if he is not on the what conditions if he's being held in prison? I remember as a psychiatric student interviewing a young man, and he had been very violent, and he said, I hate my brother. I hate this brother. There's only one brother I like. I hate this one. I hate that one and that one. He was telling me all the people he hated. And then he went what we call hebephrenic. He said, it's a term where somebody goes hebephrenic. They have to laugh. And then I said, what's the matter? He said, you look like my brother. You understand? And they taught us that you should let the patient be closest to the door. So if the patient feels threatened, they could leave. But I hadn't done that. I was closest to the door. I had disobeyed the rules and so forth. But when he picked up his glasses and he crushed his glasses, I said, you look like my brother. And I said, which one? Which one?
The one you like? The one you like?
And it happened to be the one he liked. My back was already off my seat, ready to run. Yes, sir? Now I'm saying this, that the nurses and doctors are there able to treat patients, but they're not great at incarceration. In the prison, they're great at incarceration and enforcing incarceration, but they're not great in terms of treatment. And that's where the conflict comes in, because the nurses and doctors would understand when they go to give him medication, when they go to give him something to treat his mental illness, just like COVID. If I want to give you a vaccine, you say, I want no vaccine. Is it your right not to get that vaccine? That's a big question. If you're mentally ill and you basically need these medications, is it your right to refuse those medications? If you're diabetic and you ain't taking your diabetes medication, can the doctor force you to take the diabetic medication? All these issues come into play. But I'm raising the point. There was a film called Silence of the Lamb with Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Anthony Hopkins, his character, it said, finally ate the doctor. Had him for lunch. You understand? The doctor was upstart and so forth. I'm not going to say he should have been eaten. But when we start to dig into the criminally insane and the ability to treat and so forth, I'm telling you from my experience, it's tough, especially with the rights of the individual. But clearly there has to be checks and so. But is there a question that you could just release this person I know in certain communities there are people who are mentally ill, and residents are upset because the person who's mentally ill is getting on and so forth. They want him incarcerated, or they want him sent to mental home. But he goes to mental home for a week, then they send him back out. And how comes they expect him to be incarcerated there for a long time, and their problem goes away? And let me stop there.
Yeah, Dianna?
I have a question, Doc. Is it possible to find the root cause of things like schizophrenia and those other mental health disorders where you have, those periods of psychosis and so on? In the same way, like if somebody is depressed and you could go back and look at something and figure, okay, maybe they had this broken relationship and this is what caused their depression, or they didn't have enough money to do the things they wanted to do. So this is what caused the depression. So let's focus on helping them to improve their financial situation, or to talk about this relationship to get it resolved. Can you find the root cause
yes,
of
absolutely,
those?
Absolutely. Let me give you an example. There are going to be persons who are diabetic based on their genetics, their mother and father. And there are persons who will develop who has a risk of mental illness from psychosis and so forth based on their genetics. They could inherit that in relation. It does pass in families. But there are many types of mental illness. But there's this condition where somebody is criminally insane. I'm not talking about just mentally ill that we could treat, and so there's psychosis and so, but there's a smaller fraction of persons based on that mental illness could go on to commit a murder. They could not only commit a murder, they could commit multiple murder. A guy, Jeffrey Dahmer, who used to kill people and eat the meat and have what they call Dahmer meat. You understand? Or people who rape and murder, and there's a host of criminally insane people. What do you really do about it? In the past 100 years, they were locked away for a long time. There wasn't treatment available. Today, there may be some treatment, but will the person take that treatment? And how do you force them to take that treatment?
So if you have medicine and the persons don't want to take medicine, and there are alternative things that we can look at. I mean, we claim human beings are intelligent, and we claim we're the most civilized species so far. We have a lot of advancement in technology and all sorts of things. You have universities, people studying, you're becoming, intelligent, you're coming back certified and all of that. So today, we don't have a way of figuring out how to work with these people if it is they refuse to take the medicine.
There are some chemicals in the brain. You hear about dopamine and other things like that. And when they are deficient, they can induce the psychosis. Or when they're in excess, they can induce them. So by giving medication, an alternative way is to talk to the person, sit down and talk to the person. The person ain't talking back to you, right? Do you put down a nasogastric tube into their stomach and put it down? Do you give them an injection? Do you hold them down and give them a jab on their bottom? And so, and hopefully that will work. The bottom line, I know time doesn't allow us, but it's tough.
And I think that's what it is that concerns me. Number one, sometimes persons who are not mentally okay don't recognize that they're not mentally okay. To them, they think that they're fine, which is another factor, right?
There's no insight.
But I think, right. And I think one of the things that concerns me with this is that any point in time, any one of us can quote unquote trip, right? We never know what it is might be the push factor that might cause us to go over the line. I remember there's always this quote from Grey's Anatomy. Don't wonder why some people go crazy. Wonder what it is that keeps the rest of us holding it together, right? Because many of us go through different situations from time to time that can just cause us to become mentally unstable. So I think this is why it was of such concern to me, because suppose I find myself in this situation and nobody is there advocating for me. Nobody is there looking out for me. And I am one of these persons who ends up being lost in the system.
Yeah.
Who is actually going to stand there and speak for me?
You're right, but we're talking, I know the time, we're talking two different things. Mentally ill and mentally ill who has committed not just a crime.
Right, but
not just a crime, a murder. So therefore, there's a system for persons who commit murders. Can you say, let's forget about the murder and basically deal just with the mental illness?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Suppose it comes to a case where I do something, I become violent as a result of whatever. who is actually going to be there to look out?
No, they could handle that. They could handle that. They could handle that. You're
I'm
violent
talking about
and so
being
forth.
lost in the system. And no, in the case of me, something similar like what happened with this gentleman, right? He was committed to the institution first, mental health institution, then he committed a murder.
I think they would.
He was charged for
I think
murder.
they would have known about him. When time is out, we have known about him, from what I understand. But there is no treatment, and the individual himself does not necessarily think they do, and their human rights. How do you force that individual to accept that they've done something?
All right. And just to note for persons who may not be aware that the government of Jamaica has been ordered to pay $120 million to a man who was locked up for over 50 years without a trial. All right. And he too was, I think what it said is that he was initially unfit to stand trial, if I'm not, at one point he was unfit to stand trial, but he too was lost in the system. So you can just Google that and that information will come up for you. All right. So we have to head on out at this time, as it's time for us to bring to you this morning's court desk.